Jonathan Lee Riches investigates. I am in Marianna, Florida, site of the old Florida School for Boys, aka Dozier School for Boys. This used to be a reformatory for minors from 1900. I think it shut down in 2011. Wild stories coming out of this place here. It's abandoned buildings located in Marianna, Florida. But let me tell you some history about this place, this boys' reformatory type of facility. They shut it down. Check this out. I'm going to share some information about this place.
The Florida School for Boys, also known as the Arthur G. Dozier School for Boys, was a state-operated reform school located in Marianna, Florida, from 1900 to 2011. It was one of the largest juvenile reform institutions in the United States for a significant part of its history. However, over its 111-year existence, it became notorious for widespread allegations of abuse, including physical and sexual abuse, torture, and even student deaths at the hands of the staff. The school's troubling history led to multiple investigations and efforts to address the allegations of abuse. In 2009, after the school failed a state inspection, a full investigation was ordered by the governor. Subsequent investigations by the Florida Department of Law Enforcement in 2010 and the Civil Rights Division of the United States Department of Justice in 2011 confirmed many of the historic and recent allegations of cruelty and abuse. As a result, the state authorities decided to permanently close the school in June 2011. One of the key issues surrounding the school was the unmarked graves on its grounds, raising questions about the number of deaths that occurred there. In 2012, the University of South Florida conducted a forensic anthropology survey, which identified 55 burials on the site, with most of them located outside the cemetery. Records documented nearly 100 deaths at the school. However, the state initially claimed it did not have the authority to allow exhumations of graves for the purpose of determining the cause of death and identifying remains. It also expressed an interest in selling the land on the property. A family member of a student who had died at the school in 1934 filed a lawsuit to prevent the sale of the property until remains could be exhumed and identified. In response to the court injunction, the state authorized additional work by a team from the University of South Florida, including exhumations. In January 2016, the USF team released its final report, which included 7 DNA matches and 14 presumptive identifications of remains. They plan to continue their work on identification. Notably, the report highlighted that 3 times as many black students as white students died and were buried at Dozier, except for a 1914 event in which a large number of white boys died in a fire. In April 2017, the state held a formal ceremony to apologize personally to around 24 survivors of the school and to families of other victims. Efforts were underway in 2018 to consider bills that would provide compensation to victims and their descendants, possibly in the form of scholarships for children. As of 2019, during a pollution cleanup, 27 additional suspected graves were identified on the Dozier site. This raised concerns among many people, including former detainees, who believed that over 100 bodies might be buried on the school's grounds, and that further investigation was needed to identify and properly care for all the remains. The history of the Dozier School included racial segregation, a cemetery known as the Boot Hill Cemetery on the north side, and allegations of brutality, violence, and mistreatment of students, particularly during the 1950s and 1960s. The White House was a building where severe punishments were administered, and allegations of beatings and torture were made. The school went through several name changes, oversight structures, and periods of investigation. At different times, it was known as the Florida State Reform School, the Florida Industrial School for Boys, the Florida School for Boys, and finally, the Arthur G. Dozier School for Boys. Throughout its history, investigations revealed numerous instances of abuse and neglect, Despite these investigations and attempts to address the problems, the school remained plagued by a culture of violence and mistreatment. The issue of unmarked graves and the need to identify and reinter the remains of students who died at the school became a focal point of later investigations and legal actions. The University of South Florida played a significant role in these efforts, utilizing modern forensic techniques to shed light on the extent of the problem. The history of the Florida School for Boys is a troubling one, marked by allegations of severe abuse and mistreatment of students. Efforts to uncover the truth about the extent of the abuse and the number of unmarked graves on the school's grounds have been ongoing, leading to apologies from the state and discussions about compensation and memorialization. The story of the Dozier School serves as a sobering reminder of the need for oversight and accountability in juvenile justice institutions.
So let me know what you think. Wild stuff, right? They said there's a burial ground possibly here with children. I didn't see any. It kind of reminds me of the Pennhurst School in Pennsylvania. I don't know if you guys ever heard of Pennhurst. Wild stuff. I'm out here investigating and giving you some knowledge and information about this place. We will talk soon. Stay tuned.